Okay, so everyone, my name is Maura O'Mara. I'm the Vice President of League of Women Voters, Mid-Hudson region, and it is a pleasure to see so many people with us tonight to discuss what's happening with the elections. As a reminder, I was just in the midst of my favorite thing to say, which is that League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We have been around over 100 years. I love the voter engagement part. Anyone who knows me knows this is my sweet spot in our organization. Nonpartisan for League means we don't support any party or candidate. I know we have at least one member who in the Zoom tonight who holds elected office. So no offense to any of you, it's just that's not our thing. But we do like to get people as knowledgeable as they can be and as engaged as they can be so that they do vote, and participation for us is the biggest thing. And for this year in particular, participation is great but confused. So the census information from 2020 rolled out last year. Redistricting happened, maps have been withdrawn, people don't know who, what, where, when. We have special election stuff. League has been involved with litigation with the Board of Elections. No offense, that was just our position, and that got sussed out. And so with great things, as an Ulster County resident, I live in New Paltz, New York. We have both commissioners of elections with us tonight, Ashley Dittis and John Quigley. And so we are so grateful for their participation with one another and their participation with us, which has always been collaborative, always been a yes when we ask for information, and will be a super way for us to inform our team of voter registration volunteers, of whom I see many in this call, which I'm so grateful for, because we always want to do a little bit of training before we head out to the community and answer questions. And I know I need this so much. I was looking at last year's primer that we did before the elections, much farther down in the year. And but we needed to do it in July, and lots of things had to align for us to be here in July. I'm joined here with Dare Thompson, who's our new president of League of Women Voters Mid-Hudson, and many members of our board of directors. So I'd like to just quickly say how we're going to run the program for the greatest chance for participation, and then I'm going to hand it over. And that is this: please mute yourself. If you have questions, comments, links, use the chat. So when you put your question in the chat, I get to be the person who may be a little bit the interrupter, or hey, could you go back and say that again? There's some questions in the chat about. So it's usually easier for us to get our questions with a panel if we do it that way. There's already some links in the chat, which I want to thank Liz Lee for adding some links there for some trainings that she's doing with her organization, which is not our organization, just FYI. So that is, Liz, can you just tell me, is that UAC doing that? Which organization is that?
Yes, it's UAC doing it.
Okay, so that's Ulster Activists. It is a progressive group. I just want to say that those are not our voter trainings, but if anyone in the chat room has something to share that you think could inform, certainly do that. I just want to say that's not from a league member, but Liz is someone who has participated in many of our things, and we always like to see her there. Thank you, Liz. And yeah, so I do have the slideshow that the commissioners of elections sent to me. I can do this a couple of different ways. Ashley, John, you tell me who wants to have the wheel. I can't do co-host for however it's set up tonight. I can only do a host, so I can hand it to you, or you can tell me to click through, whichever feels more comfortable.
Feel free to give it to Ashley.
Is that okay, Ashley?
Yeah, that's fine. I can run the slideshow.
Okay, and this way I can run the chat.
That sounds perfect.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much. Let's do that. Okay.
All
Handing
right.
over the reins. There we go.
Cool. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. And I'm just going to move you all over so I can see it. All right, so we're going to get started right away. I know most of the people on this group personally. I know that you are all very high functioning and you know a lot about our election system and structure. But even for those of us who live, breathe, sleep, this kind of stuff, what is happening this summer, specifically in the next couple of weeks in August, is not your typical election calendar, nor is it typical for our voters. So the way that this is designed is to hopefully give you a framework when you're out there doing the work that you do, registering voters, tabling, going to festivals, or just talking to your friends, your family, people online, so that you can give them the information that we all need so that we can make informed decisions in only a short couple of weeks when we'll be voting in a special/primary election. So without further ado, we'll talk about what is happening on August 23rd. There are two elections running at the same time. There is a special election and a primary election happening on the same day, during the same polling hours, at the same polling locations, and at the same early voting sites. Early voting is going to start on Saturday, August 13th, and it's going to go until Sunday, August 21st. For the special election, and this is Ulster County specific, but it does cover, I don't know, usually there are a few people from Dutchess County on a lot of these league meetings that we have. So I'll try to speak to what is happening in Dutchess too. But in Ulster County, all registered voters are eligible to vote in the special election. And that is because the special election is for the current congressional 19th district. That happened because Antonio Delgado was selected to be the lieutenant governor for Kathy Hochul for the remainder of that term, and to also run with her in November as the Democratic candidates. Now that we're through the primary, they are our Democratic candidates on the ballot. The reason that we have a special election is because that vacancy occurred before July 1st. If it had happened after July 1st, there would not be a special election. The primary election is also again on the 23rd in Ulster County. That means that all registered Democrats have a primary happening. Depends on who their candidates will be based off of what town or election district they live in, but every single Democrat will have a primary ballot. Republicans also have a primary if they live in those towns that are on the screen right now, and that is Denning, Gardner, Hardenburg, Marbletown, Olive, Rochester, Shawangum, and Wawarsing. So that is just a high level, 2 elections, same day. So let's talk about the special election first, because that affects the most people. A special election is just like a general election in that we are choosing someone to assume office. So these candidates that are running, they were selected by our 4 major political parties, and they're running on those lines. And the winner of this election in August will serve the remainder of this congressional term that expires at the end of the year on December 31st. The boundaries of this district are the existing boundaries, but these boundaries will also expire on December 31st. So everybody who's in Congress this year is serving in these older districts. So that's why it's all of Ulster County. Ulster County right now is all in NY19. Now, unless you're living under a rock, I'm assuming that you all know who is running for these elections. It is the battle of the county executives. Ulster County Executive Pat Ryan is the Democratic and Working Families candidate, and he is running against Dutchess County Executive Mark Molinaro, and Mark is the Republican and conservative candidate. And this is what the ballot looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, and this is what people will see. So the primary, also on August 23rd, is determining the candidates for the Democratic or Republican Party for the November ballot. And these are the 3 primaries that we have going on. For the new Congressional District 18, Pat Ryan is also running, and he's in a primary with Moses Mugalusi and Aisha Mills. And it's a vote for one, and one person will be the Democratic nominee for Congressional District 18. Congressional District 19, the new version, has a Democratic primary, which is going to see Jamie Chaney running against Josh Riley. Again, vote for one person. And the Republican primary is a state Senate primary, and that's going to see Terry Bernardo versus Peter Oberacker. Again, it's a vote for one. And these are what those different ballot styles look like. So the Democrats who live in the 18th district will see this style on your left on the top. The Democrats in the 19th district will see the style that is on the left at the bottom. And on the right is the Republican ballot style for the Senate district. So big question that we hear a lot, why is Pat Ryan running in two different districts? And it's because of redistricting. So again, I've already explained it, but this puts it all in one slide so that it's very obvious. When voters go, and if they're Democrats who happen to live in the current New York 19 and the new New York 18, they will get two ballots, two pieces of paper, and both of those ballots will have Pat Ryan's name on them. One is the special election, and the other is that Democratic primary. Pat Ryan happens to live in Gardner, which is at the same time in the current New York 19 and the new New York 18. He isn't moving. The political districts have moved around where he lives. Same thing goes for Sean Patrick Maloney, who currently represents New York 18. He lives in Putnam County and Phillipstown, and that is going to be in the new New York 17, which is where he's running. And if he's successful, that's the new district number that he will represent. Now, there's confusion on both sides. Both sides are saying different things, but these are the facts. Mark Molinaro, he lives in Dutchess County. That's also in the current 19. It's not in the new 19, but he can still run in the new 19. There's no residency requirement, and he could move if he wants to, but he technically doesn't have to. You don't have to live in the congressional district that you represent. And when redistricting happens, this sometimes happens. Not very often, but it can happen. So that's really the crux of this issue, why people are saying, well, why is he running in 19 and 18? And it's only because those boundaries, they move, they get changed. And when the special master redrew those lines and the courts decided to have this primary on August 23rd, that is the new district line. So what does it look like for the voters? That for us at the board is the most important thing and the focus on our minds. How are the voters going to engage with the ballot? What is that going to look like for them? Well, let's break it down into the three different ways that people vote. First is our mail-in, our absentee votes, and those are already out. We've sent out ballots for over a week, almost a week tomorrow. It was when we sent out our first ballots. So voters in Ulster County, all absentee voters, every single one of them is getting a special election ballot. And if they're a Democrat or a Republican in the areas with primaries, they will get an additional ballot for the primary. What we're doing is sending them two separate ballot packages. So they get the standard 3-envelope package in two different mailings. One's for the special and one is for the primary. Early voters, when we start early voting on August 13th, they will sign in once at the check-in table and everybody will get a special election ballot. And if they also happen to be a Democrat or a Republican, they will get another ballot for their primary. So they will get two pieces of paper, those Democrats and Republicans. So when they sign in the back end of the way that we program the poll pad, they're coded to get two ballots printed on demand once the voter completes their sign-in process. So in that way, it's foolproof. There's no way for the voter to be issued a wrong ballot. They will get both ballots. And for administrators, this is the best method for us anyway, for a voter to engage with this process. And that's because of that printing mechanism that we have established in our early voting sites. Unfortunately, due to the amount of equipment that we do not have, we cannot do that everywhere on election day. And we have to send pre-printed ballots to our 83 poll sites in Ulster County on August 23rd. So if voters wait and choose to vote in person on that date, they will also only have to sign in once. And at the table, the inspectors will issue every single voter a special election ballot. And then if they see that they're on the screen and that they're in a party, which will be part of their check-in process, they will then have to issue that voter either a Democratic or Republican ballot if that's the party that they're enrolled in. So the inspectors will be physically tearing the ballots out of the booklet and issuing those two pieces of paper to our Democrats and our Republicans who live in that Senate district. So it's going to be very important that our inspectors that are working for us on that election day are mindful when they're checking a voter in, that voter, they understand what ballots they're qualified to receive. So that's on us as the commissioners to make sure that when we train all of those inspectors, that they are aware of this complicated process, because it's not what they're used to. They're used to giving out one ballot depending on what table the voter signs into. So just to briefly talk about a change that happened this year, because this is only the second election in the history of New York where this change to the absentee ballot status is in effect. We just experienced it in last month's primary, where voters who have requested and have been issued an absentee ballot can no longer go in person and sign in and get a voting system ballot. And that's because we're counting absentee ballots before we start early voting and before we have election day on August 23rd. So if a voter does get issued an absentee ballot and then they decide to go to a poll site, at that poll site, their only option is to get an affidavit ballot at the in-person poll site. We obviously just went through this in June, so we have now a little bit of experience in how to deal with this issue. And to be proactive, we sent a lot of affidavit ballots to our poll sites so that we could manage a higher threshold, a higher capacity for people to engage in affidavit balloting. So it was largely successful in June. However, August, with the added layer of complexity, with the different ability to have more than one ballot issued to you, we are going a few steps further, and we are going to be not just retraining our inspectors, but giving them printed materials so that they can match the primary ballots correctly. So we'll use a color-coded system that they're somewhat familiar with, because the ballots in primaries are color-coded, but so will the affidavit envelopes that they will be issuing to voters when they vote this way.
Ashley, also, we have some comment. We had some questions in the chat as well.
Oh yeah, sure.
So one of the questions was, sounds like election workers have a very different setup at polling places this year. And just was trying to get a gauge of how many people in the audience are working on election day. What I would just comment on that is to say, here in Ulster, what we've done is we've proactively taken steps to make this as seamless and easy of a transition for our inspectors, to make sure that they're issuing the correct ballots, not only from having them color coded based on the primary that they're available for, but also using a numbering system that allows you to match numbers so that you know you have the same ballot style to give to the correct voter. And these are all notes that every election we send out to the polling sites for our inspectors on special instructions. This year, we might just go one step further. This election, we might just go one step further in providing a lot more information in the forms of a diagram or something to make sure that this step is completed by the election inspectors who work that day. And then we also had another question from Cindy Bell. Can they drop off an absentee ballot at the polling place on election day? Yes. On election day, every poll site, all 81 of them, are essentially extensions of the Board of Elections. And when they get received by you and brought back to us on election night, we actually stamp them in to receive them, to make sure that they're timely so that we can count them as we go forward. So those were the only questions, Ashley.
Oh, cool. And also our early voting sites, they can drop them off there too, because we collect those absentees that are dropped off at our early voting locations. Our experience, seeing as we've already done this with our one election already in June, was very positive. All of the history of challenging absentee ballots and major lawsuits developing after election day, this gets rid of all of that. So that is a thing of the past. Election nights are more inclusive of all of the ballots that we've issued. And it really means that unless something is extremely close, there really aren't going to be any close elections anymore that'll be determined by counting absentee ballots. So for example, on the night of June 28th, there were no elections that were within mathematical probability of changing because we had already counted most of the ballots. There was no more, if it hadn't changed with one of our races, we might still be in a counting room with lawyers comparing signatures, and it would have been quite frustrating seeing as we have a very condensed turnaround time to now construct and implement and successfully conduct an August dual election. I cannot even imagine. I'm sure there's an alternate reality in which Commissioners Ashley and John are extremely more stressed out than the ones that are in front of you today. The other upshot is, and this starts with this August primary, is that voters no longer have to pay to return their absentee ballot. It is covered by the state, and they will be paying for all of the returned absentee ballots for both this August election as well as the November general election. Okay, so just to visualize our early voting sites, it's 5 of the same 6 sites that we just used in June. The only change to the early voting locations is in Kingston. We normally have voting at the Midtown Center. However, it is summertime and the city of Kingston uses that site for their camp programming. So instead of being at the Midtown Center, we'll be down the road at Kingston High School. So that is the only change to the early voting sites. The schedule is almost exactly the same as it was in June. So the weekends are 9 to 5. The weekdays are a mix of daytime and evening hours. So early voting, we really hope that people utilize it. Even some of you, I'm sure on this call, are some of the people that I hear from that say, I just like voting on election day and going to my local poll site and seeing all of my neighbors. Well, early voting is, like I said before, the most streamlined balloting process in this very complex procedure that we are doing. So we're always pushing it. I know I'm always pushing it, but we're especially pushing it this August because it is going to make things a lot easier on election day for our inspectors and for our voters if they utilize some kind of early voting in advance. So without further ado, we can talk about election day. Again, all of our poll sites will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Our tables are arranged in a general election format, so people will be signing in at election district specific sign-in tables. there is a change to the town of Wawarsing. There is a new election district there. We had to create that due to the special master carving into an election district and dividing that district into the two new congressional districts. So for most 99% of our voters, no change. And there's an exception in the town of Wawarsing.
Ashley, in the comments, we had another question in regards to affidavits and how that's recorded in our poll books. And I would just comment to Liz and everybody listening that due to the way a voter can sign in and potentially need to be issued an affidavit, because it would be after they sign in that they would realize that they're not in a primary party, or if before they sign in, they give us the heads up that they are not in the political party or they want to be able to vote in that political party. The affidavit situation is going to be very well detailed in our special instructions for our election inspectors, because it's something that voters, we will never be able to deny them the opportunity to vote for the ballot that they wish to choose. And if they are issued one ballot but not the other, they will still have to complete an affidavit for that one ballot that they were not issued, but they will still be able to cast that ballot for the special election that they were issued. So it becomes a bit of a more complex situation for this specific election. But in regards to affidavits, we're always going to issue an affidavit to any voter who feels they should be qualified for one of the ballots that they did not receive during their check-in experience. And if that includes the fact that they were missing from the poll book completely, they will be issued two separate affidavit envelopes for the two separate ballots, and they will be asked to complete both of them in order to have both of those affidavits reviewed by Ashley and I back at the Board of Elections.
John, can I ask a follow-up question to that? Because I think the scenario Ashley had shared was about if someone had asked for an absentee ballot and they were issued one, they wouldn't be able to sign in on the poll pad. And if they said,
Yep.
hey, I lost it or I haven't sent it in or whatever, some people would be doing affidavit in that case as well, correct?
That would be a perfect example of where somebody would be issued two affidavits, one for the special election and one for the primary, if they qualify for the primary or if they are seeking a ballot for the primary. This could be very straightforward, where it's just simply a voter who requested an absentee who is non-enrolled and they were only issued the one ballot, and therefore when they go to try and vote, they would simply just be issued one affidavit for the special election in order to complete that ballot at that time.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying.
Okay, so on this slide, I just want to say for our effort, we are developing a mail piece to send to every single registered voter in Ulster County with information specific about the August 23rd special and primary. It's going to include a lot of information, dates, times, and as well as the voter's assigned election day polling location. So since we send that regular mail in the spring, that mail did not include the August election because it didn't exist at that time. So we are going to go through and send every single registered voter in Ulster County an additional mail piece that they can then utilize to remind themselves, or maybe they've never even heard of it at all, that there is this election coming up. Outside of that, we'll be doing other outreach via social media, through the Ulster County pages, public service announcement on the radio and local TV, and advertisements in our traditional printed newspapers. So since you are all essentially advocates for voting, we just ask that when you see those things, that you engage with them and that you share them through your networks. The more we send this out, the more it gets repeated, the more likely we are to have less confused people out there who truly want to go and vote, but they don't know what's going on and they don't know what they're supposed to do. So share everything you say.
We had a quick follow-up in the questions in regards to affidavits. They will be recorded in the poll books. There are also times where they will not be recorded in the poll books due to when somebody signs in, but yes. For the majority of the times they will be. And then on top of that, Cindy, we will always share our slides with others so that you can share them wherever you feel that they are best to be seen. We appreciate that thought.
So Liz, you're asking a lot of questions about affidavits. I know you're one of our inspectors, and you'll get this speech at election inspector training, as will all of the other inspectors, because every single person working in August will be trained before that election. Affidavit ballots seem to, at least lately, be deriving a lot of follow-up questions, a lot of in-depth questions. And just to simplify the affidavit process, in its basic core, is that they are a safety net for a voter that is having a difficult day, and we are there to issue them. We are not there to dissect whether or not they're going to be counted. That is not an inspector's role, nor is it their authority to make those determinations. It is simply your job to issue the correct ballot to the voter, ensure that they've completed the paperwork properly, and that that paperwork is sent back to the Board of Elections so that John and I can then do all of our due diligence to go through, verify them. And the law has been amended and updated so much in the last year that affidavits really have become a very good option for a voter, and more of them are being counted than ever before in the history of New York election law. So, for example, on the primary day in June, we received an abundance of questions from election inspectors who were asking questions about whether or not the affidavit was going to count, to the point where it became somewhat a joke in the office, because all we kept saying over and over and over on the phone, through the messaging element on the iPad, was just issue the affidavit. Just issue it. Don't think too deeply about it. The deepest you have to think is, am I connecting the voter with the right ballot? And if you do that, you're doing your job. All of the elements of whether or not it's statutorily compliant, that is not your job, nor is it your role. So all you need to do is issue the voter the right ballot, and it will most likely count. If you have follow-up after that, that's a great thing that we can talk about after the election when we're actually looking at the affidavits. But for the voter experience, making sure that they are getting something that they can vote when they're not able to sign in the poll pad is really the main goal of the inspectors at our poll sites. All right. So with that being said, we are in extreme need of election inspectors to work on election day on August 23rd. We have to fill a lot of seats because it is a special election and we are running it by district. So, and it's summer and a lot of people are away, and a lot of our regular inspectors are either not available or we haven't heard back from them yet. So we are actively recruiting in a very extreme way. So this is just put up today on the Ulster County Facebook page. I think it's on Instagram too. Please share this graphic. Please share it with your networks. Anybody that ages 16 and over can work for us. If you don't want to work the whole day, I know it is extremely long because I also live that extremely long day alongside the inspectors. But if inspectors come to us with a friend and they call the time of sign up and they say, me and my friend are going to split the day, then we will assign you to split that day. You don't have to work the full 16 hours. Our training is going to begin in a week. 75% of it is online. So you'll be going at your own pace. We have a video presentation that you can watch in increments. And then the other 25% of training will be our inspectors coming to our office for an in-person workshop where they will put the equipment together in a mock poll site setup, and that will be in our office in Kingston, where we will show our inspectors the different kinds of ballots, the different kinds of affidavits, and how they're actually going to look when they work in August. So every single inspector will have that training in person, and we're very optimistic that that in-person experience will alleviate any anxiety that inspector has in working correctly and not making any mistakes. John, are there any questions in the chat before I go to the next one?
There are, and I'll just also highlight that it will be at our new office
Oh,
on
wait.
Hurley Avenue, as we are moving to a brand new location in which we will have the capacity to do some of our training, if not all of our training, right in a nice setting for individuals to come and learn how to be an election inspector. That schedule in regards to doing it's only going to be a 45-minute to an hour long in-person training, is available if you call either of our election inspector coordinators. And the best number to reach them at is 845-334-5470. I did see a comment in the questions in regards to what the phone number was. So if you give that phone number a call, you can get the schedule from either Nicole or Fran, and they will be more than happy to sign you up for one of our classes in person. As Ashley and I both do this actual teaching ourselves, and typically we would have a 6-week period in order to train everybody. This year, we are only going to have a 3-week period in order to train everybody. So we are doubling down on classes. We will have to find time to do our day-to-day work elsewhere. It is going to be a priority to make sure our inspectors are well educated on how to work on election day. And so it's going to essentially be every Monday through Saturdays. There are going to be a variety of classes based on the position you are interested in and the town you are working in which we can get you a position, and we will work with you from there. Again, the phone number is 845-334-5470. Now, one of the highlighted questions, and one probably I bet the most anticipated question, is in regards to our I voted stickers.
Oh, well, that I got that coming. Don't worry. I knew
So
that would come up.
we'll hold on to answering that in a moment. But I will say thank you for all the enthusiasm in regards to the I voted sticker.
All right. So just, to reinforce, we are moving. Move out day is Friday. So that will be our last day at 284 Wall Street. And our first day will be on Monday, this Monday, the 18th, at our new location on Hurley Avenue, the Daley Freeman building. We are the spot all the way to the left. I circled that, I hearted it. So that is where the Board of Elections will be. Very exciting. And last but not least, our I voted sticker contest. So this was this afternoon when I made the slide. We were at 188,000.2 votes overall. That's probably about as many people that live in Ulster County. So our contest this is the second year that we've done it. It is, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I put this in the slide. It's most likely the world's most famous I voted sticker in modern American political history. That is the sticker made by 14-year-old Hudson Rowan of Stone Ridge. Actually met him this morning for the first time. He is a great kid. All of the kids are great that participated in our program. This is part of our youth voter engagement program. This is one part of it. We also have our Voting for Kids coloring book. We have an internship program. Our intern is starting actually on Monday. She's from Kingston High School. So this is going to probably be our most famous I voted sticker contest that we ever do. But it's been quite an experience, and we have been having a good time. It's been a positive, bright spot in an otherwise very chaotic and very stressful political season. And this sticker will be issued if it's the winner. Of course, we assume it will be just based off of its enormous lead, but the contest does not end until July 29th. That winner will then be printed and issued for the general election, starting with early voting. And then I think it was late last week, we decided that the 5 runner-up contestants, that we would do a special run. We weren't going to issue any stickers for August 23rd, but now we will. And our voters that engage in next month's election will get one of the 5 stickers. So we're printing all of the 5 runner-ups, and when people vote, they will get one of those. And then we'll just have posters that say, come back in November, and we'll have our winning sticker for the general election. So that is it. I have a slide for Q&A that I put a GIF in, so I hope that you enjoy that. And I'm going to just stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody and we can answer any of your questions.
Wow, thank you both so much for that. I was thinking the same thing about the slides that other people were inside the chat, because I'm thinking I have to print this out. I have to have this in tabling. I may steal some of these slides and include it in some training coming up. So I did get, but via email from the commissioners, the slides, and I'm going to see if we can post it to the League of Women Voters Mid-Hudson website, which probably will take till tomorrow. So just give her maybe 2 days. So just give us some time to make sure that's there. We always rely on you, but usually it's like, okay, I know most of it, but here's a couple of good things. But wow, I've sometimes worked election day, and this sounds very complex. I will check my calendar. I'm not traveling in August. I don't know if I could do the full day, but maybe I could split a day. If someone in here wants to split the day with me, get in touch with me, and maybe we can do that. I think that's always a really good option. The sticker was really cool. There's a suggestion in here to sell pins of the sticker. I don't know how if you guys are allowed to make revenue, probably not. It sounds like Hudson's getting art. It probably has an art dealer now working on taking contract suggestions for him. I agree with Liz, by the way. The coloring book is great. I think you did that last year. Lots of facts in it. We handed out some of those pages at different things. If it's a family oriented event that you happen to be going to, that's always kind of a nice thing to have in your go bag if you're volunteering, as many people in this group are. Pat Lamata wants to know if you can get the spider sticker in Dutchess. No.
I'll be honest, there are other counties across the state who are actively trying to reach out in order to get this sticker in their county, if not in other parts of the state, of the country, I should say.
Yeah.
So I would definitely stay tuned. If not, reach out, encourage your local commissioners to see what they can do.
In the meantime, we are taking, if you email our office, we are keeping a spreadsheet of people that really want one, and we're going to be ordering those later on after the August election, and we'll get plenty of stickers for people that come to vote. And if you really want one, we'll do our best to send you one, or you can come, if you're local, you can come pick one up from us, because it certainly is quite popular and we understand the enthusiasm. We are not likely, we have a lot going on, so I don't think we're going to set up a store, but we have sent along to Hudson and to his parents information on people that have offered to help, or people that want to purchase things from him. He made this, it is his. If anybody should make any money off of it, I think it should be him. And he's a great kid. His dad is an artist, so I think he's kind of aware of how this all works. So he's having a great time, and it's really nice to see somebody that young. He has a good head on his shoulders, not as crazy as the head on the sticker. He's a really nice kid, so I think that he's got a bright future.
Well, Gloria has a great comment saying that it's kind of like a concert tour thing like merch from 2022, it's I agree. I think that's a super cool way of looking at it, and I think you would appreciate that. The phone number and a new address, I'm glad we all have that now. If anyone has a question that's not in the chat, this is your chance. We have 10 minutes left. We don't have to go to 10 more minutes, but if you want to unmute yourself and ask the questions. It looks like Barb S., do you have an absentee question?
Yeah, I'm reading your question now, Barb, about the new process, exploiting loopholes since challenges are no longer public. So the way that the statute was previously written was that challenges could be entered by a candidate or a candidate's agent. Usually that was their lawyer or maybe somebody that they have designated as their agent in the counting room. They did not have to give a reason for that challenge, but it did have a time limit. It was a 3-day challenge period, at which point they had to then go to court and file a lawsuit and petition that reason in front of a judge. That statute has been amended, so there is no longer that relief for a candidate or them to identify an agent. So there is no more setting a ballot aside. Candidates and truly anybody with a poll watcher certificate can come to our office when we open or when we scan those ballots to observe the process. But the invalidation of absentee ballots is now at the sole discretion of the Board of Elections. However, a lawsuit can always be filed by any duly qualified voter in the realm of challenging elements that are still in the law, which are elements of voter fraud or malintent. And then the burden of proof would be on that person filing that lawsuit. So loopholes, I think that they've actually closed loopholes, because in previous, at least my experience in previous absentee counting, the word veracity holds a deep meaning inside my inner core of my mind, where that is the famous reason for challenging a ballot that lawyers would use. It just means truthfulness, and they would challenge it off of that. It really doesn't mean anything. It just means we're going to play a numbers game to see how close we can get this election and really run this clock as far as we can to try to win this election for our client who's paying us a lot of money to do this process for them. So now, because of these changes, the state also has a very extensive standard for us reviewing absentee ballots. So we go through every single absentee ballot that is received by the board, is reviewed, it is looked at for a signature verification. And if a ballot is deemed to have a defect, the voter has the ability to cure that defect and get their ballot back into a valid status. So the voters have more protections for themselves as far as knowing that there's an issue with their ballot or knowing that their ballot is in jeopardy of not getting counted. And that has been, from our part and our board, that's been a very successful process for the voters. I'm not sure of what other loopholes you had in mind, and if you want to say them, we can address them.
I would also just comment that a lot of the authority has also been given to the commissioners to challenge these ballots throughout the receiving process and before we even get to opening the ballot. And part of it is applicable to the cure process, where we do see a number of ballots that get sent out to be cured because the signature doesn't match. They didn't completely fill out or close the envelope, some items like that. They are brought to Ashley and mine's attentions by our individuals who do the review for us to have final ruling on whether or not to send it for a cure to get it out there. So that process, while it used to be one which had outside participation in, to allow you to challenge a ballot is still in place in a way that allows us as the commissioners to apply the law upon receiving the absentees.
But one really important part of that is that in order for a ballot to go into that cure or to be deemed invalid, both commissioners have to agree. So if one of us thinks that it's valid, it's gonna get opened and it's gonna get counted. Both of us have to think that there's something wrong with it and agree to that in order for that to start. So it's not like we are now the extension of that partisan behavior. It has to have a real issue with it in order for us to go ahead and take those next steps. So it's interesting, and so far so good. We've only done it once, and we'll see how it continues to go. But if any of you want to come and view it, please let us know. We have a good time opening ballots. We kind of get into a mechanical groove of doing it, and it's somewhat monotonous, but we have fun with everything we do at the Board of Elections.
Do you mind if I comment a little bit on what I meant about the loopholes?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I was thinking about the investigation that's going on with the sheriff in the Fleischman's area. I'm thinking about the absentee ballot situation that happened in Blooming Grove, where people were either sending multiple absentee ballots to one specific address, or people are looking for opportunities if they're a second homeowner to see how they can game the system and vote in person at their home, and then vote also absentee by a slightly different name at their summer residence. Is that something that you're towards against?
So we do have systems in place to account for that, and I'll say most specifically because it's probably the one that raises the eyebrows the most in regards to where somebody might submit an absentee in one location, but then try and vote in person in another. There is a point in our process where we have to upload all of our information to a statewide database to sync and allow for it to catch any individuals that have the same name across different county boundaries. And even it can be the slightest of matches. I'm talking like the first 3 letters of the first name and the first 3 letters of the last name and a date of birth that match, that could catch it. There's a lot of different combinations. And then what happens is a file gets generated and comes back to Ashley and I, where we have to then individually go through those potential double votes, so to speak, and basically have contact with that other county to see if it's an exact match. If it is an exact match, whose ballot was received first, if it was already opened, etc., before ruling on which of the 2 counts. That stops that one right in its tracks due to our ability to work with other county Board of Elections and cross-examine the information that we receive. I think in regards to absentees, bulk of them being sent to one address, it's a ongoing conversation on how this is dealt with, because it's dealt with differently, and we as commissioners cannot deny anybody the opportunity to have an absentee issued to them as a voter. But what we will do at times is we will see if there are, say, a handful of people who are picking up a large number of absentees on behalf of a voter. And at times we will simply reach out and ask that voter if they still would like that ballot to be brought to them by that individual voter after that election, or if it was a one-time thing, allow them to have the opportunity. Because now with absentees being, if you request a permanent status, you're always going to get one. You're never going to have the opportunity to vote on the machines. It does become something that we have to educate those permanent absentee voters on, whether or not they want that to continue.
Yeah, on the subject of the ballot harvesting, our board, specifically our board, has been the most vocal in the state group about concerns that we have with it. And we don't even have big examples of it. Like the Blooming Grove example is very big, much bigger than anything we see in Ulster County. But in our local elections, mostly is where we see candidates for local office, county legislators, town board supervisors. They will come and try, or they can, because they're empowered on the application to be someone's agent, and they will do that. And a certain percentage of those voters select the permanent voter status. The courts are on the side of these agents. That has been something that has been applied in the judicial district that we live in. Albany County had to put a limit on how many ballots an agent could get from a board. That was deemed to be not in concert with the law, so they had to take away their rule. This is something that the legislature would have to take up so that boards could enforce a limit or put some kind of mechanism in play to resolve this issue of ballot harvesting. But from my understanding is that there is a lot of differences of opinion at the State Board of Elections on this subject. And if it's something that the league is interested in, there is a lot of information on it. There's a lot of data just to see where it's happening, why it's happening, and how it's serving the public. What we do in Ulster County, every January, we send our permanent voters who have an agent designated to pick up their ballot, and we ask them if they want that continued. Because actually what we see more often is in a non-local election year, when those specific people are not running for office, they will not come and get the ballot for the voter, and it will sit in our office. And then we take a step to call those voters and ask them, what's going on? Do you know your ballot is here? Especially now that they can't go in person anymore and rectify it by voting a voting system ballot. So with this June primary, knowing that this is now an issue for absentee voters, and they might not even know that an absentee ballot was issued in their name because they signed a piece of paper last October, we have been going through and identifying those applicants and trying to explain what is going on with them and what we can do to help them. What do we do? So yes, Cindy, the allegations of fraud when people do double vote, that is election fraud, and it's voting twice, which is against the law, and it can be prosecuted, not by the Board of Elections. We would bring that information to the district attorney for them to go through with criminal procedures. If we do find somebody that through that cross-reference that has double voted, well, the way it's supposed to be stopped is that when these absentee ballots come back to a board, say it's the Ulster County Board, and we are going to open it, it's going to get prepped for canvassing to be counted. It gets put into our system, but then our system uploads that to the statewide database, that clearinghouse. And then all of the boards are supposed to then get that information back so that we can then have notes in our poll book to prevent that voter from then signing in, meaning that they would have to then do an affidavit ballot. And then there's an additional affidavit cross-reference before we can count any of the affidavits, which we're supposed to count 3 days after the election. So before we count them on that Friday or the following Monday, we have to verify that they didn't vote absentee anywhere else, that they didn't vote early anywhere else, and that they didn't vote in person anywhere else in the state. And so far, that this one election we've had, that has worked the way it's supposed to work. And it was a smaller election. We did have the most percentage turnout in the state, so we were a little bit more busy than everybody else, but keeping it going and keeping that groove is really important. The biggest critique that I have is that not every board is on top of things as we are, meaning that they don't process things in a timely manner. So if they're not processing a duplicate voter and they sit on one for months or over a year, like what happens in New York City at their boards of elections, it creates a problem for the rest of us. So everybody needs to do their work in a timely manner and process all of the forms that they have. And it's going to become especially more critical next year, starting in January, when we start having automatic voter registration. So all of this voters going to the DMV and that's automatically registering them to vote. It's going to create more reliance on the State Board of Elections to have that statewide database be up to date and functional so that the county boards can ensure that nobody is voting more than once or being registered in more than one place. So the State Board of Elections just was awarded funding. They're supposed to keep refresh and update and keep this going. So they definitely have a lot on their plate, and we certainly hope that they rise to the occasion.
Well, that was really important information and worth going our 4 to 5 minutes overtime. That's a question we get all the time. And can you remind me what the fine is? Is it something like $10,000 if you get caught?
Yeah,
voting
it's
twice?
$10,000 or up to 5 years in jail. It's not worth it to commit voter fraud because most elections are not decided by a handful of votes. Now, your Blooming Grove example, I think, could be a factor if there are hundreds of votes coming and they are fraudulent, but those should be escalated to either that local district attorney, or if it crosses county lines, which I believe that issue did, then that would be something for our Attorney General to investigate. And our Attorney General has been investigating a lot of issues of voter fraud. In Rensselaer County, there was issues that she investigated and prosecuted on. And I support those investigations. I think it's important to keep our elections with integrity. So when we see it, we say something, and hopefully someone does something about it.
Right. So I want to thank everyone. Ashley, I think you might have the stop record button since you are the
Ooh.
host now.